Good evening and welcome to the overnight edition of From Day One. Art Bell and his guests are waiting in the wings as you can hear the music queuing up in the background. Tonight we go to December 7th, 2015.
From
the guest, Neil Sanders.
Great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's 25 time zones, each and every one covered like a blanket by this program, Midnight in the Desert. My name is Art Bell. All right, the rules of this program are ever so easy. No bad language and one call per show. During the week, we only have 2 rules. We insist you adhere to them. I would like to welcome the mighty Cliff, KLIF, 570 AM in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Welcome to the program. Or should I say, welcome back. I guess we're back, really. I was on Cliff long ago, and so I'm just sort of back. Hello, Dallas, Fort Worth. Glad to be there. Man, I remember in the old days, you know, I'm an old rocker, so Cliff was like one of the top rockers in the whole U.S. Man, I'll tell you. I've still got air checks, old Cliff air checks somewhere. All right, let's look at a little bit of news. Then we're going to talk about mind control. And boy, I cannot think of a better case of mind control than is going on with ISIS. When you can remotely influence somebody to not only change what you believe, but go out and kill for that new belief, and you can do that on the internet, that, baby, is mind control, if there ever was such thing. The San Bernardino killers had been radicalized apparently now for quite some time, had taken target practice at area gun ranges. In one instance, just days before the attack that left 14 dead, in a chilling twist, authorities, you get this, also disclosed that a year before the rampage, Syed Farouk's co-workers at the county health department had undergone an active shooter training in the very conference room where he and his wife opened fire on them. That's right, active shooter training. I wonder what that's like in San Bernardino, California. My guess is you hide under desks, you hide in closets, you lay down and play dead. You know, I've never been to one, so I don't really know what they suggest. And I'm sorry, but here is where I'm Second Amendment all the way. To me, an active shooter training would be how the hell to shoot back. Have a gun to shoot back. Don't go down like a lamb. That's something I believe in very strongly. My political views are, you know, all over the place. I'm liberal in some areas. I'm very conservative in some areas. I'm constitutional in most of them. And that's it. Active shooter training. Learn how to shoot back. That's what I'd say. It's commentary. Syria on Monday accused the U.S.-led coalition of bombing an army camp in the eastern part of the country, killing 3 Syrian soldiers, wounding 13. But a senior U.S. military official said the Pentagon is certain that the strike was from a Russian warplane. The dispute over the deadly airstrike underscored the increasingly chaotic skies over Syria as various powers hit targets in the war-ravaged country. I'm telling you, it's like LAX on a bad day there. Our planes, European planes, Germans, French, British, Russian, American. Yeah, nothing can go wrong there, huh? And then, about the middle of the day, Donald Trump just, threw everything up in the air, as he is inclined to do frequently. Donald Trump called Monday for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, an idea swiftly condemned by his rival GOP candidates for president and other Republicans as well. The proposed ban would apply to immigrants and visitors alike. So no more Muslims. What do you say? Until the U.S. government, the Congress, figures out what's going on, here's what I think. Of course, it is a million miles from being anywhere close to PC, politically correct, right? Donald is not politically correct. It's probably not constitutional either. I'm not sure about that, but I doubt it. And yet, I think today, a lot of Americans are probably saying privately in their own homes, yeah, yeah. And this is how Donald has had luck. He says what everybody's thinking, but afraid to say. If you say something like that, then let's say you're a bigot. You're helping ISIS. You might as well be paid by ISIS. I heard it all, right? So it's not said out loud. That's how PC we have become in America. It's not said aloud. But in the private, in homes, people are saying, yeah, baby. It's got people scared, and for good reason. Of course it's not all Muslims, not even most or many. But it's a threat to the homeland, a direct now threat, right? Every now and then, I get to read a little bit of good news. Rarely, mind you. Global carbon dioxide emissions may be dropping ever so slightly this year, spurred by a dramatic plunge in the Chinese pollution, according to a surprisingly very surprising study released Monday. The unexpected dip could either, be a temporary blip or the true thing, the only true hope, really, that the world is about to turn the corner on carbon pollution as climate talks continue in Paris. So that was a little good news for the climate talks, I guess, right? And then I thought this was hilarious. This comes from AP, and I'll read it as it is pretty much. 2 Fox News contributors were Monday for using inappropriate language about President Barack Obama while discussing his speech on terrorism the night before. What they said, Peters, let's see. I guess I better read the whole thing, right? I usually don't do that. The analyst, former U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, and actress Stacey Dash were each ordered off the air for 2 weeks. Peters was appearing on the Fox Business Network program, hosted by Stuart Varney. When he was asked his reaction to the president's speech, he said he didn't like it. Quote, "This guy is such a total pussy. It's stunning," quote, Peters said. He got booted off the air for 2 weeks for saying that? Well, I thought that was the norm over at Fox. All right, enough of that. Neil Sanders, who's coming up, holds a master's degree in film studies. Studied psychology and media production for his BA honors, is a qualified hypnotherapist and past life regressionist. Boy, am I going to be asking about that. Neil is considered an expert on mind control, which is supposed to be the topic, and has been studying the history of this dark art and its application by military and government intelligence agencies across the globe for many years. He's appeared on a lot of TV shows, made numerous radio appearances in Europe and the U.S. to bring the subject of mind control to the attention of the public. Neil is also the author of Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, Volumes 1 and 2. Now, isn't that a little bit disturbing? Hearing that your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, are not your own. They were formed, ignited, thought of, passed on, distributed, propagandized to you, and now you think that that's what you think because of them. They're controlling your mind. few coming up in a moment, all the way from Great Britain. Not sure where he is in Great Britain. We'll find out. But he sounds great on Skype. So we're going to be discussing, well, a lot of things. Mind control. If ISIS is not the best example of it, I don't know what would be. From the high desert, I'm Art Bell, and this is Midnight in the Desert, raging in the nighttime.
The clock strikes 12, and Midnight in the Desert is pounding packets your way on the Dark Matter Digital Network. To call the show, please direct your finger digits to dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952. Call Art.
All right, let's see if we can reach out across three, and then out across the Atlantic Ocean to the other side and get to Britain. Neil Sanders, welcome to Midnight in the Desert.
Hi, Art. How's it going? Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. You sound great, Neil.
Well, thank you.
This is an important topic to me, so I'm going to take it in sort of pieces here. And the first topic I want to actually address is I've done so much on regressive hypnotherapy and past life regression that before we launch into the mind control, I'd really like to know what you've done with regard. I mean, look, is reincarnation real?
I don't know, to be quite honest. I mean, it would be unfair to categorize me as a past life regressionist. I have done quite a few past life regressions. I know how to do them.
That qualifies you.
I beg pardon?
I said that qualifies you.
Well, yeah, well, it's not something that I do an awful lot, so I'm not perhaps qualified as some. You know what's very interesting, though, Art? When I first did it, I have to confess that I was a bit sceptical about it. I thought all you're going to do is like, you know, prick the person's imagination and they're going to see essentially what they want to see. Right. But that was until I actually started trying them. And it's a very, very curious thing because everybody's experience is different. Everybody's experience seems to be incredibly detailed, but the thing that sort of got it for me, or sort of certainly made me think maybe there's something in this, is that uniformly everybody's experience was ridiculously mundane. There was never like I'm a knight on a big white charger. I'm Cleopatra. There was none of that. It was always
but Neil, it should be mundane. I mean. It makes me suspicious when I hear about a past life regression and you're always Christopher Columbus or
exactly
somebody like that. I expect the mundane, and the other would be very, very rare.
Well, that's exactly it, and it was the sort of the depth of detail that people were reporting, and sort of the real all-encompassing feeling of actually being there. That is certainly a very interesting experience. I've never had it done to myself. But as I say, I've done it a few times.
Okay, well, then the question is this, Neil. Do you consider that you really are taking somebody back into another prior life?
Very possibly. What is also possible is that there's some sort of collective memory, what Jung would term as the collective unconscious, and that you're sort of tapping into some other experience. I suppose it very much depends on how you view life. Do you know what I mean? Whether it is all one thing experiencing itself subjectively, or whether you are actually sort of a separate channel, I suppose. But it's certainly very, very curious.
Well, I don't look at it that way. I look at it either as true or bunk. And I think it's true. I'm kind of coming around towards sort of believing in a reincarnation. So if reincarnation is real, well, then the work done by hypnotherapists who take people back and find another life validates it.
Well, I mean, I certainly know some people that do. I mean, I don't do this, but what some people do is they do all their therapy in past lives. They assume that basically, any problem in this this life, so to speak, can be sorted out by going back and sorting out problems on other life lines, so to speak. And you know, they appear to have great success. So who knows?
Well, according to those others that I have spoken to, when a hypnotherapist takes them back to some sort of trauma, maybe the way they died in the last life or major trauma in that life, it then sort of releases karmically them in this life, and it doesn't bother them so much anymore. You think that's accurate?
Very possibly. It's like it's a catharsis that basically that happens. Is you release, as I say, the pent-up emotions. That's certainly what you aim to achieve in one way or another. In every form of hypnosis, basically, well, every form of that's not forward positive suggestion. You'll get some people that do this sort of thing. It's like, imagine yourself in 3 weeks' time wearing that red dress, and you look so thin, and everyone loves you, and you look fabulous. And you know that's one method.
I actually don't think of myself that way ever.
Well, you know,
but you never know. I think with the past
we
life,
can sort something out.
Yeah. Maybe we sort something out. Right. It's morning there, right, Neil?
It is. I'm afraid it's desperately early here.
How early?
Apologies if I'm a bit scattered.
Actually, I was going to compliment you on your sense of humor for 5 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yes, it is 5 o'clock. It's about 20 past now. But
got coffee and whatever.
But well, thank you very much. Well, hopefully I'll maintain it. If you hear me sort of thud, that's just me nodding.
Well, that's why I was asking. You got coffee or
yeah,
maybe
I've got stuff. I'm fine.
Okay, stuff. All right. All right. We are going to talk about mind control, and so for that purpose, define mind control.
Well, I mean, it's a very, very broad spectrum, really. I mean, anything that causes you to change your perspective or act in a way that would not be your own preferred way of acting could be defined as mind control. I mean, in the realm of sort of, you know, military application, MK Ultra, social control, and that sort of thing, it basically falls into 4 subjects. The first would be truth serums, the search for some sort of mystical drug or potion or powder or whatever that can basically render somebody completely open in an interrogation scenario. The second would be the flip side to that, which is...
Well, let's not go past that one yet. Hold on. You said they can give a drug that will render somebody absolutely open. In other words, there is nothing they would not tell you. Is that really true?
Well, there's certain drugs that were tried. I mean, this was the foundation of all the American entries into, and the English entries into mind control. I mean, the English were trying this in 1943 at least. In places like Egypt, you know, during wartime, and then the Navy started Operation Chatter in 1947, and they used all sorts of things, ranging from getting people something as sort of unsophisticated as getting people addicted to heroin and then refusing, you know, like in the French Connection 2, basically, we're not going to give you this unless you start talking. And then other things would, you know, putting people on high amphetamines and stuff like that. Then there's a lot of other drugs that we use that sort of open you up, make you a bit more suggestible, things like scopolamine and sodium pentothal and sodium amytal. But it's a strange one because you can only really go off the sort of the release and declassified documents, and the majority of them basically say that, well, unfortunately, we never really got to the end of this, and there was no meaningful results. But to be quite honest, that you would put that anyway.
Well, when you look at the media, a lot of TV shows and movies, they bring forth this elixir in a needle, stab it into somebody, and they just say anything that the interrogator wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly examples of experiments where this was certainly tried. Some were very useful, some were not. What's very strange is just going by the documents, the best method of getting information from people was actually hypnosis. Now, that's a bit of a loaded statement because I couldn't get that information from you, but apparently the hypnotists that were attached to the projects were able to. But it certainly suggests that there's something missing in the notes. You wouldn't be able to do this just by using suggestion. You would have to sort of enlist a certain amount of trauma into that. But we can come on to hypnosis later. But certainly things like scopolamine. I mean, they use scopolamine in South America. They call it devil's breath. And they grind it up and they'll blow it in your face and then get you to go and empty your bank account, and you'll use it for doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it will make somebody do virtually anything.
Yeah. I mean, how effective it is, there's a certain amount of befuddling with all these drugs, so how effective it is, it's sort of...
Well, the better question is, if that really does, as you just described, and we know about that, then what are the ones that we don't know about that the CIA has? What do they do?
Well, exactly. I mean, they tested literally hundreds and hundreds of drugs, like the whole list of every sort of available and unavailable narcotic was tried. Some very, very exotic things like STP and BZ. I mean, that was initially, again, how the Americans got involved in the sort of experiments with LSD and such like that, because initially, again, they felt that it might be useful as a truth serum. Later, they decided that it would be more helpful as a sort of an incapacitant, something to... If you would spike somebody with LSD without their knowledge, and basically then they go and do a press conference or whatever, that they act like a complete fool, and it discredits them.
Gee, you're not suggesting that Donald Trump was so infected prior to his speech today. You probably haven't even seen it yet. You're in England. You don't know what he said, unless you've watched the news. Anyway, that was a joke.
So who knows what is going on with Donald Trump? But,
well, I'll tell you, actually, it's very interesting. It really is interesting. Donald Trump said today that all Muslims, and I mean all, visitors and immigrants alike, should be barred from coming into America until Congress figures out what's going on.
Well, isn't that throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I tend to think that Donald Trump has a tendency to take very, very complicated issues and uses rhetoric and lowest common denominator politics to grossly oversimplify things.
The thing is, though, Neil, it works.
Of course he does, because basically what we've got at the minute is a politics of fear. I mean, I don't know whether you want to come on to this at all, but basically, fear is beneficial for countries.
Of course, yes.
It's very, very strange, but basically it drives the population to a very childlike state.
Oh, yes.
Sorry?
I said, oh, yes. I mean, absolutely. Look, America right now is full of fear, and I know in Europe the people are too. A lot of fear going around.
Absolutely. What's strange is that basically your sort of go-to position is to go to an authority figure and ask them for help. What's even more curious is that Tavistock Institute. The Tavistock Institute was a psychological think tank that basically came out of the studies of shell shock during the First World War. It's English, but it started by a gentleman called Hugh Crichton Miller, John Rawlings Rees, and then Kurt Lewin, who was involved in both the Frankfurt School and the starting of the OSS. Basically, the Frankfurt School went on to found certain things you might have heard of, like MIT, Stanford Research Institute, National Institute of Hypnosis, Esalen, Rand, Wharton School of Economics. It helps with blue chip companies like Unilever, BP, IBM, CBS, and NBC, Shell, Hewlett-Packard, the FBI, the CIA, Naval Intelligence, Department of Defense, U.S. State Department.
I get it. Yeah.
Right. What was the main point of Tavistock? Tavistock instituted what they called future shock. Future shock was the methodology that they devised and recommended to all companies and governments that they were helping with.
Okay, what is
basically
that?
What it involves is a huge amount of stress that comes from outside points, usually terror and that sort of thing, in a Gladio-style operation, in order to reduce the population's thinking capacity. It reduces them to what's called a tabula rasa, which is a blank state.
Yes.
It's just curious that this tactic appears to happen, or this tactic that is admitted and documented if one was to take a step back, certainly you could overlay that on today's scenarios.
You certainly could, and we will, I think. You're right. Fear is just a great motivator, and it's really in play right now. That's really why I thought, Neil, that tonight we should try and understand how ISIS, reaching out from Syria with internet propaganda, can manage to take people who are good Muslims and slowly but surely change them and radicalize them until they are prepared to go out and, sacrificing their own life, take as many lives as they can. I can't think of a wilder scenario in my own mind than that. My God, you're just reaching out, using nothing more than social media to take somebody who's a relatively normal person and turn them into a killing monster. I mean, that really is what we're talking about. Hold tight, Neil. You look like an angel, walk like an angel, talk like an angel, but I got
Midnight in the Desert doesn't screen calls. We trust you, but remember, the NSA. Well, you know, to call the show, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952. Call ART.
Okay, so I sometimes wonder if people are actually listening to me. Somebody named Frantic Rose. Really Frantic? Or is it Frankie? Frantic, I think. It sounds frantic. Says, I'm unsubscribing, Art, because you're basically like my kind of racist Fox News watching grandpa. Outdated views and supporter of a dangerous fascist. Wake up, man. Really? All I did was repeat the news of the day. And in terms of Fox, all I did was comment on the guys that got in trouble on Fox. I'm not a Fox watcher. I just came across the AP. People, I think, don't know where I am politically, but if they think they detect where I may be politically, they go crazy. So does she think I'm a Trump supporter or not a Trump supporter? Just because I commented on the news. Oh, well, it does not matter. Back now to Great Britain and Neil Sanders. And so, Neil, we were talking about ISIS and how they can reach across the world on the internet, no drugs involved, and convince people to kill. I mean, my God.
Yeah, I mean, certain questions should be asked about. They have an incredible PR mechanism, ISIS. They have T-shirts that you can buy, websites, magazines. There's an ISIS magazine that's produced. Did you know that? They have Twitter feeds and such like this.
I do. I know all that. Yes.
It begs certain questions. I'll tell you, the only thing that I could liken them to is the PR firm Knowlton and Hill. That's the only other firm that I've seen that has had such successful and far-ranging PR. I mean, for crying out loud, ISIS gets into more homes than Justin Bieber. It's ridiculous. Like they're really utilising the modern day things, but that begs a lot of questions because you can shut down websites, you can find out where servers are based, IP addresses and such like that. For them to have such a huge and apparent and overt mechanism is certainly, I think, very strange.
All right, so here in America we have the First Amendment. I'm curious, are ICE sites in Great Britain barred?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you. I've never really been on them. I would imagine. I don't know, to be quite honest. I really don't know. I mean, obviously some people are getting onto them somehow, but again, I haven't looked myself, to be quite honest.
Okay. I was just curious. I know your government is a little bit tighter than ours in a lot of regards, and that might be one of them. It could be stopped. I believe it could be stopped.
Well, yeah, I do. I think it's very strange. I mean, you could even look at sort of like the utilization of Twitter and certain,
yeah.
I mean, certain elements of the Arab Spring and such like that. I mean, for example, in Iran, it was proven that the CIA were trying to foment riots for one reason or another, but with the use of Twitter and social media and such like that. So we're now in a cyber world, basically, cyber espionage as well, and by that I don't mean in space. So yes, again, it's very, very strange. But again, Hilton and Knoll, by the way, is the PR firm that was hired by the American government to convince us to go to war against Iraq the first time, where they got the girl out and pretended that she was Kuwaiti and that she'd seen Iraqi soldiers murdering babies, dragging them out of incubators, and it transpired that she was actually a good friend of President Bush.
Yeah, I remember that.
For some reason, he didn't recognize her. I assume because his vision was clouded with tears.
That whole thing was filled with lies and propaganda, and sure, and that would relate to a lot of the wars that we've jumped into over our history in the U.S. No question about that.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way, okay? What's certainly strange about ISIS as a terrorist organisation is, in one sense, they're incredibly PR savvy. They as you say, they're able to recruit people and stuff like that. And yet, time and time again, they make bad decisions that would draw us back into Iraq, decisions that would draw us back into Libya, decisions that would basically result in their death, ultimately. Now, it is certainly curious that all these decisions that are made by this completely separate terrorist organisation certainly seem to advance the foreign policy and the desired foreign policy of England and America. I'll give you an example. Like as early as 2011, we were trying to invade Syria. We were using, do you remember a thing called Syria Girl? Where basically there was maybe you didn't get it in America, there was a blog that was going on in a newspaper in England of this poor repressed girl that was living in Syria, and she was constantly in threat of being murdered by the Assad regime because she was secretly a lesbian.
Oh.
Now, it transpired that not only is that not representative of how lesbians are treated in Syria, but it also transpired that not only was this person not living in Syria, but they were a gentleman, a CIA agent, living in Scotland called Tom McMaster, whose wife was involved in some firm that was trying to redevelop. She had a master's degree in Syrian economics or something like that, and she was also connected to intelligence.
All right, so how are lesbians treated in Syria?
Well, as far as I'm aware, better than in certain other places.
Really?
As far as I'm aware.
And does that apply to male homosexuals as well?
I don't entirely know, but I've heard, yes. But again, I'll be working on received wisdom. I've heard it's not as bad as in some places.
That is.
I mean, what's interesting as well is that basically, again, if you look at the mechanisms that, if you take it as read that this was an attempted coup, that, first off we try destabilising through sort of public opinion, then we start financing the Free Syrian Army, then we use the media to sort of put out the idea that there's a popular uprising against Assad, all of which is proven to be false later. What's strange about that is it's identical to the failed coup that the CIA attempted in Venezuela in 2002. Exactly the same techniques were used and were later exposed and admitted to. So it's certainly strange. So this is the thing about something like ISIS. Well, I think that's the utilization of the fear. It makes you think of it in a vacuum, and you can't think of it in a vacuum. Because, now here's another thing. Why would anybody join something as crazy as ISIS?
All right, let's move 10 miles an hour at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go back to the Assad government. Do you think the U.S. is unreasonably demonizing the Assad government? Is that?
I'm suspicious of the tactics that are used because they're duplicitous.
Well, we, like every other nation on earth, we propagandize, right?
Of course.
To support our actions.
Yeah.
So, is the Syrian government, the Assad government, not the bad guy or guys that that the media makes them out to be. Is that what you're saying?
If you want to really break it down to as simplistic as that, then
I do, yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
He's not as bad as is being made out to be.
I see. And the Russians right now, of course, support Assad, and they are bombing mainly the rebels that are fighting Assad. You agree that's going on?
Yeah. Well, that's certainly what is being reported is going on. Again, what I think you've got is a proxy war, and I don't think it's contained to war. I think it's connected to broader gas pipelines and economic structures. Essentially, America looks like it's going to lose itself as the major hyperpower, and so it needs to sort of claw back any incentive to get dollars into the petrochemicals market that it can. That's what, in my opinion, I think you've got to look at the Ukraine as well. I think basically the Ukraine looked like it was going to leave the European Union, and that would have been very detrimental again to this concept of getting American petrodollars into the world to keep America strong in the global sort of market sense. And so I suspect that was used to sort of almost distract Russia a little bit, because obviously the Ukraine-Russia thing has a certain historical bent that also goes into it. And also, again, to give you the idea of painting Russia as a bad guy. I mean, we've been using things like that band Pussy Riot to try and paint Russia as the most terrible place. You know they were sponsored by the American Department of Defense? Like, they're not a real band. They've only ever produced one song, Such As It Is, and it was financed by the American Department of Defense.
Yes.
I mean, how more blatant can you be?
Yeah, okay, I'll go along with that. I don't know if I want to discuss Pussy Riot, but I do want to discuss.
They're really not worth it.
No, they're mostly not. But I do want to discuss what you think's going to happen in Syria. Do you think the Russians? I know we've been putting on the PR. I've seen it since the crash of that plane, even early on before we understood that there was a bomb on it. I'm not still sure about the bomb thing, but the U.S. was saying, well, this will turn Russia around and they'll start bombing ISIS. And boy, we were heavy on that. I saw that as
U.S. It was a little on the nose, wasn't it?
I beg pardon?
It was a little on the nose. It seemed a bit obvious to me. It seemed like a slightly clumsy blackmail attempt.
Yeah, just a bit. I saw it that way.
It's one of those things, really, isn't it? Because this is what it's all about. This is what this fear is about. This is, in my view, I think to a degree, this is what the proliferation and the constant advertising of ISIS is. I mean, they've committed despicable acts. There's nothing that's going to take place.
Here's what I want to ask about, Neil. Their propaganda mainly consists of pretty horrible things. I mean, showing people getting their heads cut off, burning pilots alive, shooting people in the back of the head as they're lined up kneeling on the ground. That's a lot of their propaganda, Neil, and I'm wondering how that translates in people's brains to, oh boy, I want a piece of that.
I know. Well, I mean, it's very, very strange, isn't it? But
yes, it is. It is.
You could. I mean, I'll say for why, right? Or certainly in my view, why it's the same reason that anyone would join an army, and this is not meant in a disrespectful way, but the way that anyone would join a sort of a group or a club or a cult or anything like that. Why do people? Well, there's two things, right? Okay, nobody joins an organisation, right, going, oh, I'm going to be the worst, or maybe gangs, like, drug selling gangs, but nobody tends to join an extremist organisation to say, oh, I want to be the worst, I want to be the bad guy. People use mental gymnastics to justify their position. Whatever they're doing, it's justified because, ends justify the means. They're going against something worse. So you've got to understand that. Again, these things don't exist in a vacuum. For whatever reason, they feel that their actions are justified. And then, well, why would people join a cult? Because it gives people security. It gives people a simplified version of the world. It tells them what the world does, what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right. And it also shows their position in it, which is incredibly psychologically comforting. So that's would be the psychological mechanism as to why people join ISIS. The sort of political manifestation of it, I can only assume, is that they feel that the ISIS mission is justified for whatever reason. I assume they are fighting against what would be considered Western imperialism. I can't see any justification for that. You can't fight fire. Well, but I don't want to come across as an ISIS supporter, is what I'm trying to say, Art.
Probably that's a good idea.
Huh?
Not to come across that way.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's monstrous. Using terrorism for any means is absolutely monstrous. It's despicable. There's no justification for it at all. What's interesting is who does it ultimately benefit?
Well, let me ask you a question and just flush this out. Are you personally also upset with or disgusted by American imperialism?
Not just American imperialism. I think the foreign policy of a lot of nations is despicable.
Is that including yours?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of what we do is couched in flowery rhetoric, and it uses suspiciously fortuitous world events to cover up what is essentially going to be of economic benefit to the invading country.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And we can look back to what we did in Iraq as the reason for ISIS being where it is right now. And I do look at it that way. And boy, what a mess that was. However, there's no saying he was a good guy. I mean, and there's really no saying Assad's a good guy either. Now, they're very, very strong hands in their country when they have control.
But this is the point, it's not as simple as good guys and bad guys, is it?
No, it isn't. And I'm willing to say this much. I'm not willing to, I think, go as far as you go, but sometimes it seems like these bad guys, these iron hands, are what a country needs. It may well be that not every country is meant for the kind of freedom that we have here in America. They're just simply not ready for it. And when you eliminate that iron hand, you get something worse.
Well, I mean, you're always going to get a period of, after any emancipatory act where people go crazy. I mean, you could compare that to, I imagine the first week that weed was legal in Colorado, there was a lot of people that were throwing up.
Actually, I just did a show on that, Neil. And nothing at all bad happened in Colorado. In fact, the crime rate actually has gone down.
No. What I mean is you'll have a bit of a blowout. Like when something suddenly becomes available, like when you go on a diet or something like that.
I'm sure there were long lines, if that's what you're asking. Long lines.
I beg your pardon?
Long lines.
How do you mean long lines?
Well, it's in front of the pot shops in Colorado.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That's what I mean. So, yes, of course you're going to see some sort of chaotic scenario, but I don't know if that justifies despotism.
Right. So, again, how is ISIS, with these horrible videos, able to convince young people in this country, young Muslims, to turn from the center of what is their ideology to a new one and then randomly kill? That is as much of a mind control at a distance as I could imagine, no matter what we talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's very effective, and it uses the same techniques as I say, as joining the army, as selling Nike trainers. It's that inclusory thing. It's like, I want to be part of something. And the whole point is it's positioned in such a way. I would imagine that there's not, that you've got to be pretty damn desperate to want to get into that sort of thing. So, like a lot of cult mentalities, I imagine that they're picking on a lot of weaknesses in human psyches and stuff like that. Getting people to blame existential problems like on one thing. My life's not going particularly well, etc., 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 and this bloody American imperialism. You know what? It's all down to American imperialism, and then you'll channel it in that way. I would assume. That's the thing. You've also got to appreciate that a lot of these people are coming from sort of war-torn areas where they've got a very limited view of the world. And so their position they would position themselves as freedom fighters incorrectly. I would hasten to add, but that's how it can be done. This is how you convince people of things, right? Walter Lippmann said, how do you control people? Well, you paint the pictures in people's heads because people work. I'll put it this way: you find a lump of yellow metal. You assume it's gold. You would react as if you found gold. If you've never seen a map or a television and somebody tells you don't go that way, you'll fall off the edge of the earth, you're not going to go that way because you work on the received wisdom of the pictures that are painted in your head. So
I do interview people about the edge of the earth where you fall off too, Neil. That's a whole other story. Hold on, please, Neil. We're at a short break. It's 2 minutes. We'll be right back. This is Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell.
And with that, we will leave Art Bell for this evening. We will pick him up and his guest, Neil Sanders, tomorrow at the same bad time, same bat channel. So with that, the day will draw to a close here in Dominion. Please like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those goals of 50,000 viewers, 1,000 subscribers, so Boxing Extras will send us those red packages, and YouTube will actually pay attention to us. Coinbase and Ibotta are below, $10 each free when you do sign up for their services. And of course, Coinbase Learn 2-minute lessons, 1-question quizzes for up to $100 free crypto. And Ibotta rewards you for what you normally have to do anyway, and that's to shop. Till next time, make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another, and it's always a great new world to release the Krakens. So enjoy your night, have a great night's rest, and we'll see you tomorrow as we march along here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your rest.